racialized trauma and stress can be experienced on a lot of different levels.
Mhm.
And you talk about it having an impact on mind, body, and spirit. Can you discuss that more?
Yes. So, first of all, to look at stress, we have to take a look at why understanding stress is important. Because if you think about it, has anybody not experienced any stress in the past week? Most of the time, people will say, yes, they've had some stress. Some stress is good stress, and some stress is bad stress. Good stress is like when you're planning a wedding, or you're planning a birthday party, or you're planning to go out and do something. You feel a little bit of tension in your body as a result of that. But our stress and chronic stress affects our health and our relationship and our works. And when we think about the past year and a half being quarantined, isolated, having homeschooling, working from home, mask and hand washing, we all have experienced some stress. But healing is impossible. It's possible. So it might be nice to dream that it might just melt away the stress that we have. But if we don't take care of ourselves and know that it's a part of our daily lives and it comes in many forms, that most of the time we think of stress as bad. But there are some good times that you have stress. Preparing for a test, you get really stressed out about that. So the difference between stress, anxiety, and chronic stress are that you have stress when you're overcome with pressures that causes the hormone adrenaline to be released. And that comes from a sensory result, something you see, something you hear, something you taste, something you feel, something you smell. That can cause you to feel stress. But when the stressor is removed from the body, then the body returns to what we call a settled or a normal state, a normal calm state. And then your breathing returns to normal, and your heartbeat slows, and you reset again. But anxiety is when the stressor has been removed and you still have the impact of your body. So you have a feeling of doom suddenly with any trigger or recognized stressor. It aggravates your anxiety level. It could cause a panic attack, like a racing heart. You experience sweaty hands and face, and shallow breathing, which is difficult to grasp a full inhale or an exhale. And then finally, chronic stress is the emotional response and to pressure felt or experienced for a prolonged period of time. Can we say pandemic? In a prolonged period of time in which an individual perceives to have little or no control. It can occur in response to everyday stressors as well as exposure to traumatic events. So that's the difference between stress, anxiety, and chronic stress. And chronic stress can affect different parts of your body. You could lose your hair, you could have headaches, asthma, heart disease, gain weight, diabetes, and poor gut health. It can impact your autoimmune system as well. So, some of the stressors related to chronic stress is number one, daily stress, like poor sleep, children, traffic, and even your work environment. Number two, we have environmental triggers where we have living accommodations that may not be adequate. Social media, intimate relationships could also be an environmental trigger to chronic stress. Then you have stressful events like death and moving and divorce and unemployment and racism, watching our people in our environment be targeted. You have stressful emotions that come up like anxiety, frustration, boredom, and guilt, where you feel overwhelmed and just generally unsatisfied. And then finally, we have stressful relationships where we begin to feel unappreciated or unsupported. And if you have a people that feel unappreciated or unsupported, that results in feeling humiliated and rejected, judged, and excluded. And then that has an impact on your mind, body, and spirit because you take that into your mind. I have a saying, what you think about, you bring about. So if I think of myself as unappreciated and unsupported, then all of that kind of behavior will come towards me. If I change the way I think about that, then and think about that more in a positive way, like, when we have these types of symposiums on Saturday morning, then we get to look at ourselves as a people that are empowered and that have been able to manage to continue on.
That's supported, of course, by data that, and it's interesting that Blacks in the U.S. show higher stress levels than Blacks or Africans on the continent. And so that should tell you something about where the stress is coming from and
Right.
where the trauma is coming from. I mean, Africans on the continent face poverty. They faced oppression under governments that are doing them in, but they're in societies around their own people. And, that has a big difference. They don't have white people breathing down their necks 24/7. So that is a big difference. So
right.
the
I have
data,
one point on that, where Black women die at a higher rate. Research tells us that they die at a higher rate due to congestive heart failure than any other group. And that's because we have so much grief that goes unstated. And so it festers itself in our body. And so we say, I always have this saying, ain't nobody got time for that. Because if I lay down and stop, then a whole bunch of other systems stop as well. So imagine being a Black grandmother or a Black mother or a Black father that's trying to hold the whole family together. And because we just continue to live under these stressors all the time, we can't afford to get sick. And so we also don't give ourselves time to rest, because we're conditioned that we can do more. We have this superwoman and superman complex that we got to do more, and we have to do more with less. Well, that's killing us. That is a lie that is killing us. So rest and self-care are key and integral to our way of being.
Yeah, there are a number of things that can block you in terms of self-care. And of course, stress can disrupt rest, sleep, and everything else.
Absolutely.
So it's clear that, number one, for example, blood pressure, the blood pressure levels in this country are high, period. And then if you go look at how much higher they are for Blacks, then they're off the wall. And that's telling you something. And so a lot of the studies will say, oh, it's hard to determine. Or they'll just trace it to, you put salt in your diet. Yeah, that contributes. We're overweight. Well, what causes overweight? A lot of it's stress.
Right.
You know what I mean? A lot of it's stress. Whereas in Africa, it used to be viewed as, and still is, that a heavy-set woman is more desirable than a lean one. And also, heavy-setness comes out of something different. It's not coming out of stress. You know what I mean? And in fact, in traditional African societies, I pointed this out before, they had fat farms for women who are about to be married to fatten them up, because African women, African men like big women. You know what I mean? So a lot of these sisters run around parading their bigness now as a sign of beauty. Well, they understand there's a source for that, except in this society, that ain't necessarily a reflection of good health. There's a whole lot of McDonald's is driving that. You know what I mean? Like in Africa, the food you're eating is a lot healthier. So there are a lot of things driving that. So, your point, that's a very important point, that the high death rate among sisters through heart attacks due to stress and due to trauma. And we know that is a cause for all kinds of organ failures, heart, kidney, all kinds.
Liver.
Diabetes.
Yes.
Partially, diet related, but also stress related. Some people who have diabetes don't have any, weight problem, but they got a stress problem. And then sometimes mental illness, which can be brought on by a sick society, can then affect health, bring on diabetes, bring on high blood pressure, bring on heart attacks, based on the perception of reality that you can say, well, yeah, it's not true, but based on how the society is organized, it's a sick society. So it's going to produce sickness with people. So yeah, that point, is extremely important